as we're moving on here, just as a benchmark for you guys, we are in chapter 7, where really we only have arrays and vector operations here to worry about. So congratulations, you have lived through what? 85% of the overall review process here. And I don't think that that is half bad. So things to remember here. And again, they are in chapter 7 if you wanted to go back and do some reading review there. That inside of the braces here, we can see that we are declaring an integer array. Remember that it is best where you can to declare the size of your array. Remember that an array has an absolute value. It has an absolute number of elements that belong to that array. If we do not declare here that our array on line number 9 int hours, so hours is the name of our array, if we do not declare that ours contains 6 elements because of our constant int declaration, the very line above, C++ will assign it a default, which will be, in this case, 10. Now, remember that the problem, or maybe not the problem, but the challenge of working with an array is that an array has a boundary. So if here in our example, we have on line number 9 again, ours has 6 elements. And remember that elements start at 0 and they go through number -1 and -1. So the last element in our hours array would be element number 5. So remember that if I want to add element number 6, that goes no place. If I want to add element number 7, that goes no place. Those are uncaught exceptions. Any data that we want to add there is simply unaccounted for, irrecoverable, and lost forever. So do recall that one of your jobs as a developer is to know, okay, how many values am I expecting? So what is the probable range of values I'll be taking here? Also think about what is the possible range of values I'll be taking here. There are times where you need a little bit of extra flexibility there. I expect 24 is the maximum number of students who should be allowed in this class, because that's how many students we have in the classroom. However, there are times where they've let 30 students register for some of these classes. So even though 30 is outside of the range of probable values, it is not outside of the range of possible values. So because an array cannot be resized, I have to declare the larger value there so that I do not run out of values to populate in my array. So do remember also that as we're going through and assigning a value to an element in an array, I have them listed for you here as individual statements. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this, but while this is going, what I'll tell you is you are going to do an example of this using looping structures instead. Those are way better, right? You don't want to have to do this by hand every time. It's the reason we have an array. We can simply use a count for our loop and then use the count plus 1 to advertise to our user what it is that they are entering, and then enter that value into the count for that array so that count and element line up. So then you'll have really wonderful, easy, short, and efficient code, as opposed to the way I did it here. It's just, you need to do homework too, I suppose, right? So I gave you an opportunity to grow if we look at it from the positive side. So I'm just going to say 10, 10, 10, 10, 20, 20. There we go. And here are my hours out. And it's reading through there. So do remember that you can read in to an array based on its element number. You can read out from an array based on its element number. And easier than this would be to mix a for or a while loop and have it automatically done for you, because we could do this in entirely fewer lines of code if we let C++ do what it's built to do, and that is run a loop for us.